But how's everybody been? Hope everybody's well and safe.
Yep, thank you for asking. Hope everything's good with you.
Yes, we have a lot of people. I think the ENS bait is kind of working.
Nice to meet you all.
A lot of GMs in the chat. Yeah, some Dheeraj fanboys. Awesome. That's, I think, we should start. People have been stabilized. But hey, guys, thanks for joining. Thanks for joining, everybody. Glad to be here and, welcome. This is part of ETHernals, the next, it's like ETH India online hackathon. We've been doing this since 2018. And yeah, glad to have all of you here for this panel discussion. So yeah, before I get started, I mean, NFTs is kind of popular and has become popular in the last few years, right? Everybody, even my parents, know what NFT is. They just don't get why a JPEG's being sold for $1 million, but yeah, they know what NFT is. Yeah, I mean, we have had, in fact, a couple of projects, that NFT projects, come out of ETH India as well. Expansion Punks was built in a previous ETH India hackathon, right, which went to about 1 ETH at one point, and then I don't know where it is now. But yeah, so I mean, before we start, I'll just do a quick one-line intro for all panelists to get to know each other. We have Dheeraj, who has his own Twitter Spaces. He does a lot of Twitter Spaces with Web3 with D, and there's also an NFT project called Cool Club. We have Eric, who's the CT of LifePeer. We have Aryaman, who also has a NFT project called Ludo Labs, and he's built some awesome stuff and also writes a Substack that you all should subscribe to, called Tiger Feathers. We have Neer, who's building Make It, which is like a virtual music studio for you to own your NFT music. And we have Jonathan from Protocol Labs. Yeah, I mean, I think we should start off with all of you just going with a quick round of introduction, saying what you all do, how you got into the space, how you got into NFTs, and what kind of excites all of you to kind of build in the space. I mean, anybody who's up to start.
Sure, I can go first. Hey everyone, my name's John. I also go by JB, which is my initials. Yeah, I work at Protocol Labs. I lead a lot of our BD work across Web3. Protocol Labs, folks may not be aware, we maintain IPFS, which is like one way that people use to address content. We also wrote the Filecoin white paper. We maintain one of the implementations of Filecoin. We also help build libp2p. So a bunch of like core infrastructure in the Web3 space. I specifically spend most of my time talking to teams both in the Web3 space, thinking about how distributed storage can be helpful when we start thinking about just for NFTs, for gaming, for the metaverse, how do we actually scale that to internet, like actual scale, and different applications there. Yeah. Oh, and then for how did I get into Web3? I had been following Web3 for quite a while. I had a buddy way back in like 2015 who was very into Ethereum, who was like, you got to check this out. That was sort of how I fell into the rabbit hole. During my research, just trying to better understand the space, is how I came across IPFS. And given the work I was doing at the time, especially when we think about like offline contexts and building a more resilient web that just resonated really strongly with me. And then I fell into the rabbit hole from there. For NFTs specifically, I think just combining this idea of public infrastructure, which like blockchains give us, with like the ability to represent just anything, felt like incredibly like interesting from like I think even to your intro of why are JPEGs trading for millions of dollars. I don't know if in the specific one can point to like anything specifically that like this project deserves a specific valuation. I think the idea in general though of digital ownership is very different, and just I don't think people realize that like we don't actually have property rights on the web. And I think blockchains and these technologies have actually given us that, which is incredibly fascinating. So to me, that's the thing that keeps me going and gets me super excited. But I have gone on long enough, so I'll pause there.
That was great. Eric, you wanna go?
Yeah, sure. I'll go next. Hi, I'm Eric Tang. I'm the co-founder and CTO at LivePeer. LivePeer is building the video streaming layer of Web3, similar to if you think about like Protocol Labs and Filecoin is building kind of the storage technology layer. LivePeer is building the video streaming layer. How I got into Web3, I actually I started working on like Web3 infrastructure stuff when like Ethereum was first coming out. It was at the very beginning, and we were kind of working with the Ethereum team to build video streaming into the core protocol. This was back in the day when Ethereum was kind of 3 layers, right? Where they had the smart contract layer and then storage layer, which is Swarm, and then they had kind of a messaging layer. So we were very much thinking about, okay, there was no video streaming. Like we need to if it's going to be the internet computer, we gotta have video streaming. Over time, as Ethereum evolved to focus more on the smart contract layer, we kind of broke out into a team, and we started building LivePeer. 5 years later, here we are. The thing that I'm really excited about video streaming and about NFT is that I think this like content ownership thing is really like a paradigm shift, right? And the one example that I'm really excited about is that it's really changing the way applications are built for users and especially for creators, right? And so if you think about today's world in applications like YouTube, or let's use YouTube as an example, you upload your video into YouTube and you can't take your video away, right? You're kind of stuck on YouTube. YouTube takes about a 50% take rate, right? So every dollar that YouTube makes, they keep 50 cents and they give the creator 50 cents. It's pretty egregious for an application that the whole experience is basically showing up other people's creation. Like YouTube doesn't really create any content, right? In the Web3 world, that's different because data is held on the blockchain and held on IPFS and things like that, right? Where the application does not have control of that. So in a way, if you look at how this evolved, OpenSea, the most popular NFT platform, only has a 2.5% take rate, right? And that is a drastic difference. And that is because OpenSea does not own the content, and if their open rate take rate goes higher, there's a variable. There's all the other all the other platforms out there that are competing. So that keeps all the applications honest, and it kind of moves us from this paradigm of like a company saying like do no evil at the beginning, and then eventually have to move on because of they're like forced into these like profit taking behaviors, to kind of a underlining infrastructure providing the guarantees that says applications cannot be evil because there's these like just enforcements in place, right? So that's what I'm most excited about.
Sorry, awesome, that's amazing. And who wants to go next? Dheeraj.
Okay, I'll go. Hi guys, I'm Dheeraj. I'm Dheeraj Shah. I run this Twitter show called Web3 with D, where we try to educate people about everything that's happening in Web3, be it NFTs, DeFi, crypto, scaling solutions, or investing. We host a bunch of panels every day, Monday to Friday, and I really like talking and interacting with new people in the space and to understand what they're building. The whole point is we go beyond the conversation of this pumped, this dumped, this coin will do 100x, this project will do 100x, and I think this audience will appreciate it because they're on a ETH India or the folio space. So you guys are builders, so we want to highlight your stories and understand there's a deeper nuance to this. What I'm doing is I'm building a media company when it comes to Web3 with to just help people get into crypto, get into Web3, and distribute good content on all the platforms, including we starting with Twitter, but all of it will be shared between Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, and whatnot, right? So that's what I'm doing. And with Cool Club is just an experimental NFT project, which helps me just build different stuff to understand how much till where can we take the coding side of it, which also helps us evaluate to understand what bullshit or what is going on in the space with regards to promises, right? How much can you do on smart contracts and whatnot, right? So it's just an experimental project we're building. So that's about it. What I'm really excited for is NFT. This is the question, right, Shlok? What am I excited about, or just in introduction? Okay, cool.
I mean, what kind of excited you to get into the space?
Okay.
But whatever.
Journey, right? Basically, I've been in crypto since 2012, 13. I used to use Bitcoin to receive payments because PayPal was not the best if you're an Indian. Their take rate, as Eric mentioned about YouTube, was very high when it comes to service fees and conversion rates. So if I sold something for $10, I would get 6, 7, and that wouldn't even so I didn't have any margin. So we moved on to Bitcoin. I used Bitcoin as what do you say, a medium of payment, mode of exchange. Anyway, moving ahead, in 2019, 2020, I understood the space of NFTs is way more than coding, way more than just building all these DeFi applications. And I was like, oh, this is artistic, this is more fun, this has more soul, I think I can fit in. So I've done my master's in psychology, and NFTs and DAOs, and this side of it is all about even crypto is all about people and their behaviors. So that's what attracted me to NFTs. And I had the same questions, right? Why is this punk or this crypto kitty, if you were around in 2017, is being sold for such a big amount, right? And I couldn't answer that until I got my hands dirty. So I started buying NFTs. Now I have over 200 of them. Mostly I collect from projects, and now I've just expanded to collecting from artists as well. And I just like the space. I like talking to people. So that's what keeps me going.
Awesome. That sounds amazing. And Neer, you want to go next?
Hi everyone, I'm Neer. I am currently head of product at a company called Make It, which is a virtual music studio where people can make songs on their phone and mint them as NFTs. I got into NFTs probably at the end of 2020, early 2021. What happened was I was seeing everyone make these pieces of art and making a lot of money. And I couldn't make art, but I could make really bad rap songs. So I started, I minted my first music NFT, I think January 2021, sold it. And then I was like, holy shit, what the fuck is going on? Why did anyone buy this? And I think that was the aha moment for me that made it just the idea of, digital property rights, rewarding culture without there needing to be a middleman. The idea of removing kind of gatekeepers was very appealing to me. And honestly, I think the thing that excites me the most with NFTs, besides kind of what's going on in the music space, is really that, over the last kind of like decade or so, we've been accumulating a lot of status points in these digital worlds, but we hadn't quite kind of figured out how that can be kind of reflected in the purchases we make and the things that we buy. And when I look at what's going on with NFTs, I see now those two worlds kind of catching up, where I live in these digital ecosystems and now able to buy things that reflect, that help us kind of create status and show off and reflect who we are and what communities we're a part of, all through these digital goods. So for me, it's a kind of catching up of the digital world we've been living in for the last decade, and now the money that we're spending kind of increasingly moving to the digital world.
That's awesome. Ariman.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'm pretty reluctant to even speak because I'm very interested in what my fellow panelists have to say and learning from them. But what kind of got me interested in NFTs? When I first invested in NFTs in 2017, like, yo, that's my cat. It has like a scouter, it has a bandana. That's me, like I love it. And you feel this like insane affection for it. And in that sense, it's just an extension of ourselves, right? Like it's a form of self-expression. So that's what drew me in, but my mind has been completely blown by all of the use cases of NFTs. I view NFTs as just the flip side of the same coin as crypto. Crypto enables you to do everything, but the actual like digital assets in question are featureless, or they're fungible, they don't have any distinguishing features. And NFTs are just the flip side. They can do exactly the same stuff as the coins, but they can actually remember state, if you will, like as an object. They can have their own features, and that's pretty cool. Like I've seen NFTs used obviously in art, in culture, music. Protocols like Goldfinch and Uniswap use NFTs to keep track of like what your like balance is, or like what your sort of like income is from lending on Goldfinch. So the possibilities are limitless. It's exactly the same as crypto, but you can stick a face on it, you can stick a media file on it, like it can have its own sort of like data separate from the rest. So exciting times ahead, because we've not even hit 1%, I think.
That's true. I mean, I kind of agree with Ariman, right? So I mean, coming back to how he said there are so many use cases plus the flip side of a token, right? I would like to ask you all, what are some, with the space evolving so fast as it does in crypto, what are some interesting use cases that you all have been seeing in NFTs happen, right? More than maybe PFPs. What are some trends that you think NFTs will go towards, that we would kind of maybe people can build in the hackathon? Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Can I start and throw something out there? I'd love to.
Yeah, sure.
It's a music idea, and I don't know if it's apocryphal, meaning I don't know if this actually exists and someone has built it, because I haven't seen it with my own eyes, but I like the idea of it. I think it's illustrative, so I'll share. So basically, imagine that an artist makes, let's just take Kanye, because he's in the news all the time and he's doing interesting things with music and kind of like, like driving music forward in this digital age. But let's imagine Kanye West. Let's imagine he makes a track. And when he makes the track, he creates KanyeTrack.com. It's a website, and he sells 5 NFTs, let's say, right? Those that can be an auction or whatever. Now, imagine that the owner of the NFTs, let's say the 5 NFTs are vocals, percussion, like, I don't know, piano, guitar, and like harp or something. So 5 NFTs. The owner of the NFT can go to KanyeTrack.com and can log in with the wallet containing their NFT. The website will recognize that this user owns the percussion NFT, and it will give that user the option to select one stem from a bunch of different stems. So basically, imagine Kanye West has made like 20 or 30 different variations of percussion tracks to be used in that song, and only the NFT owner can decide which one actually goes to the final song. And in the same way, the owner of the vocal, piano, guitar, and harp NFTs do the same thing. They select one option from 20 or 30, And in combination, the 5 options selected by those NFT owners make up the final song, which can then be the final song that's put online, created, streamed, whatever. I just think it's a really cool idea, and I would love to see more things in this vein, like collaborative art creation or content creation with NFTs as the sort of like gatekeeper to enable that access. I think that would be cool.
A really cool idea. Need, do you have any thoughts on what Ariman said, since you're already in the space? I think you'll know it better.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea, and I think that we're seeing a lot with like CCO in relation to PFPs and this idea of kind of IP being infinitely remixable, and I think we will definitely see that in music. And that's actually one thing that we're working on right now is the idea of like each piece of content being infinitely remixable and the splits kind of carrying forward, so that if I remix Ariaman's song without his permission and my NFT sells, then like the money kind of automatically flows to each kind of collaborator. I think I think there are some people in the space who have kind of looked into those kinds of things. So one thing is Stems DAO is basically working on like stems as NFTs. Another thing is Async Art, I think, that has kind of a similar thing where you buy the stems and you can control which stems to turn on and which stems to turn off, and people can like combine those stems to make new songs. It's all very interesting, and I think the interesting thing when we're moving from PFPs to music is I think the music NFT space has a lot to learn from the PFP space, and a lot of lessons to take in terms of when it comes to remixing, when it comes to even just like how do we show off the fact that we own a music NFT, which is one big problem that hasn't been solved yet. But yeah, it's definitely an exciting space, and I think everyone can kind of look at music and think NFTs kind of make a lot of sense. I don't think we've quite cracked what the context is yet. But it's definitely an exciting space to be in. And if I were to just kind of, before I go, one thing I would throw out to people kind of thinking about, building a project, if you're interested in music NFT space, one thing that I would definitely be interested in exploring is how we help people show off the fact that they own these music NFTs. How in the same way that as a PFP, you can put it as your profile picture on Twitter and people can look at you and know that you own a CryptoPunk or whatever. Can we create the same sort of like status signaling with owning music NFTs? And that part up to date is a little bit broken, and we're still trying to figure out the right context to do that. But if anyone is working on that and interested in that, hit me up, because I would love to see what you're thinking about.
Awesome, that's really cool. Yep. I mean, anybody else with other use cases? Eric, I saw a tweet from you and you were kind of excited about talking about some use cases.
Yeah, for sure. Just taking a step back and thinking about like what fundamentally enables new use cases for NFTs, right? Like I keep coming back to this idea of like, now we have this by default open data layer. It's not just a database, right? It's more like a data retrieving layer, right? So people can now build applications not from a code start problem of like, I have to build the application and I have to get the users in and I have to get people to start doing stuff in my application, right? You now are building an application on a built-in audience with all the data already available, right? And I think that is a really powerful concept. So in this idea of like users own the data, applications are built around their data, and they can just kind of pick and choose like, oh, like I can bring my data into this application and it's going to do it in this way. I can bring it into this application and do it in that way, right? So like, what are some interesting examples? One thing I think about is kind of the Loot project, which is a really interesting representation of what that means when you create something that's just the data and have applications built around it, right? If you follow Loot, like you see, oh, like they had this really interesting like Big Bang like launch moment, right? And then they kind of people started building around it, they're not in the news that much today, but if you go into the community and see what people are doing around it, you'll see like there's a like pretty active small community of like creators that are creating content around Loot, right? They're creating they're creating little animations, they're creating characters, right? Like the visualizations of these characters, characteristics that are represented in the NFT. So I think that's gonna impact gaming for sure, because that's just such a ripe area, but also it's just applicable to all areas of applications as you can think about, right? Just like recreation, like allowing you to think about application developers as creators who are creating on top of this open data that's available.
Maybe to sort of dovetail, I think two things that I think are really interesting. Sort of what Eric had mentioned, I think the primitives is such an interesting question because it opens up the space of what people can build. So as an example, if you want an NFT of a little like Charmander that can evolve in your game without having to like burn that NFT and then reissue, it requires an ability to have mutable NFTs, especially if you want that to be verifiable. And so that's like a primitive that does exist, but it's like quite rough. But I think that's the sort of thing that like as those experiences are smoothed out, you can actually have like your Pokemon that you take to other games, but it like becomes an object that can be imbued with more meaning because it's not like a throwaway thing. It's like you keep it and like you grow it, you see the experience it, and it grows with it. I think the other way that's interesting to think about NFTs is also just subsegmenting them. So like PFPs are more like community based, and like that can be a user acquisition strategy for a game where it's like build a unique experience for like these people who could be whales that can come to your game and play and do different things, and like build experiences that allow them to bring that community with them. So like maybe your game allows you to bring in your Bored Apes, and it like all the characters will get like your specific ape like tattooed or something on its face wherever, something that allows like more customization. But I think thinking of these like NFTs not as like one monolith, but as a bunch of different subsegments can also be really interesting, because like a game object is different from like an NFT that's trying to build a community around it versus something that's like providing an artistic experience. I don't know if people played like Cyberpunk or any of these games where it's like, oh, you have a home base. Imagine if you can actually like decorate like your apartment in that video game with the assets that you've purchased elsewhere. You can like personalize it in specific ways. I think the ways in which people think about digital objects is hopefully going to evolve and change. But I think those are some of the use cases where like thinking about these as like separate types of categories of things is going to be more interesting as well.
Yeah. I'd like to add on to Jonathan's point, which he just build on what he said, is something we keep forgetting, that all our NFTs are built on blockchain, right? Like, so they're built on Ethereum. That means they are tokens after all, right? Like you can, so the interoperability of NFTs is super interesting. Now, what we are looking at things is just in their own little bubble or in their own little ecosystem. But what I see happening is as we move ahead, more and more people will collaborate and make your NFTs more usable across different platforms. So what do I mean by that is basically, hey, like as someone mentioned, right? Like I have a cool cat, which is just a PFP, right? Like now they've started a game, but let's say tomorrow Near opens a small club at Decentraland, right? Like, and whoever has these cool cat NFTs, they get a special party hat, right? Like, so these NFTs, even though you have, oh, sorry about this. Oops, just give me a second.
He's got a gradient PFP.
Yep, just give me a second. Sorry about that. I'll just this is embarrassing. Gradient PFP was funny though. I am back. Yeah, so what I was saying is basically, you can use these NFTs, and within your systems you're building, you can change it. Like, so in one game, it could be like all the different NFTs could be sword, or somewhere they could be a bike, somewhere they could be like a premium frame in, like, your universe. So seeing all these games or different applications interact with each other will make, like, your NFTs more valuable. So Neer is saying, right, like, World Wide Web. So again, it's just a representation of your NFT in a pixelated format, right? Like, what I am thinking is, like, if I am launching like a game like Valorant, and, like, we integrate them, all their skins in crypto, maybe I get a cool cat skin already because I own an NFT. So imagine how much more valuable that will be. So if I just own an NFT, maybe Coca-Cola launches a campaign where, like, you can get your cat on that NFT if you, like, purchase this NFT or something like that, right? Like, so I'm just looking at, like, using this data, using this token across different things on the blockchain.
Very interesting. I mean, I want to kind of zoom out from where we were and move on to another question because of lack of time, I feel. But what do you all think would be a good advice for beginners to get into NFT, right? A lot of from beginners, as in not just users, but in case of builders, right? A good use case for developers to start building, or just what do you think is the best way for people to explore the space? And
I want to like drop 15 use cases on everybody right now. I'm working on some of them myself. If anybody wants to work on, and I just want to do like a quick plug before this, if that's okay, just 2 seconds. So like, as I said, I think the space has like a long way to go, and I'm very curious to see how it develops. And we want to kind of like encourage people to build. So we're setting up a venture studio called Vagabond Labs. You guys will be hearing more about it soon. It has a focus on NFTs, but the idea is just we want to like incubate ideas in the NFT space, which people can build on, examples of which I'll give you right now, and give everybody the funding needed to actually focus on just shipping stuff. Like, don't need to worry about revenue, don't need to worry about servicing clients, just need to worry about building cool stuff. And we'll kind of like make everything happen to enable that. So some of the use cases which we're working on is, firstly, an NFT project is only as good as its community. That's what they say. But like, who is the community of a project? If I want to go online and find out like who are all the owners of Bored Apes, how do I do that? Like, how can I find out not only all the famous people who own apes, but also like anybody who has an ape? How can I enable them to make their own profile on this community directory and put in the information that they want to put in? How can we enrich that directory using the power of Web3? For example, can I log in, make an account saying, hey, I'm Aryaman, and I'm logging into my NFT to make my profile. Here's certain information that's public. And this information, I only want to make it public to owners of an ape. And this information only for owners of apes wearing a suit. All of these features are possible using tools that we have today. So community directories, I think Neer was you talking about like, where do you flex? Like, NFTs are a form of self-expression, right? Like, so they reflect our beliefs, desires, interests, hobbies, thoughts, and we want to share these things as human beings. So like, how do you identify with somebody else's NFTs? Like Discord, which is the main place, doesn't really have a concept of a profile that you can view. Twitter is not optimized for this. So like, how can you actually build a space where you can discover somebody's NFTs, where they can put their video or audio NFT at the forefront to be like, hey, I love Dota 2, and I got this sick Dota 2 clip as an NFT from my favorite, streamer's Twitch. Can you build something like a Chrome extension overlaying Twitter, which just like plugs in like a little viewer onto like people's Twitter profiles? So community directories, places to flex, and like 50 other use cases, but I don't want to keep harping on, so I'll stop.
That was interesting. Anybody else on?
I can give just two quick thoughts. One thought is, if you're just wanting to get your hands dirty and just kind of go through the process of, tapping into a community, building a product that delivers value for people, I think like finding CCO projects and actually just like building something of value for that community is a great way to start, because you've basically got the distribution locked in already with the people in that space. And it allows you to just get into the intimacies of like what motivates a community, what can generate value for a community, what gets people to spend money. I think there's a lot of, it's a pretty good path of like least resistance in terms of like operating in that space. And the second thing I would say is, I would say that like you should definitely be paying to learn, in the sense like get your hands dirty, buy NFTs, get into the communities, get rugged, see what works, see what doesn't work. You need to kind of go through all of those like emotional cycles just to understand what's motivating people. I think that like the deeper that I've got involved and the more money I've lost and the more money I've gained, like the more I've just begun to understand this space. And there's still so much more, you know, we're at a very primitive stage of like the whole NFT kind of Web3 digital asset world. And I think, you know, that a good place, it's a good way to just understand where the world is right now before building the next kind of evolution of it. And the third thing I would say is looking at, just looking at what you think the future kind of like form functions will be for enjoying and experiencing NFTs. So for instance, you know, one thing that I'm taking more of an interest in is, you know, VR. I think that like, you know, the Oculus Quest sold more, you know, devices than the Xbox over Christmas. It's definitely becoming an interesting place to live, breathe, interact with other human beings. But the NFT kind of like aspect to things is still not really there. So I think there's an interesting opportunity to build some sort of like, you know, kind of protocol layer between like NFTs and what's going on in VR. And I think just being ahead of the curve in that respect would probably be something that's very rewarding, very interesting. But yeah, that's
great advice. Eric, you wanna go?
Yeah, sure. I think it's really interesting to be, you know, if you're just getting into the space and you're a builder, participate in hackathons. I think that this is like one of the most unique characteristics about the Web3 space, right? Is like there's all these just like awesome opportunities to hang out with people who are like also as excited as you and getting into the space, just meet a bunch of interesting people. And also the amount of prizes that are available in these hackathons are insane, right? It's like the amount of incentives that are here to get builders to come into the space. So like if you are a builder, you want to get into the space, you're at the right place, at the right place at the right time, right? So I think participating in hackathons, joining those discourse and stick around after the hackathons are over and just see what are the chatters and kind of and actively participate in those conversations, I think is a really cool, like I see people who like are able to get into this space quickly are all people who are like actively jumping into these conversations, are like and actively participating. And the last thing that I would say is there's oftentimes something that's like driving your interest into Web3, right? So like keeping that connection with like what brought you here in the first place is good. And there's oftentimes a project that's like working on an angle that's similar to your interest. So like get into those communities, right? Like, so if you're interested in music, join the discords of all the music projects, right? If you're interested in, you know, video streaming, join the LivePeer Discord, right? So whatever that is for you, yeah, just go connect with people online. I think that's the best way.
That's amazing. There's some good suggestions in there. People should take notes, I'm sure. Jonathan, you want to go?
Yeah, sorry, can I get the question again? I was answering some questions in the chat.
Yes, no worries. So what is some kind of advice that you would kind of give to people, beginners who want to get into the space, who want to explore the space, maybe not just from the user perspective, but also from a builder, developer's perspective?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of content to ramp up on, and that can be incredibly overwhelming. And so I think the advice I've heard other folks give is like just get in discords and like talk to more people. I think I would also spend time just really digging into like the different primitives that exist and then trying to figure out like just pull on the threads. It can seem intimidating. I will also say, because so many folks are like building openly, there's also, I mean, the amount of resources is also overwhelming. And so just like don't rush yourself. I think it can be like, yeah, it's definitely worthwhile to understand like the core of like what you're building on. And especially if you're trying to figure out like what are the ways that you can architect your project to actually be like future proofed, and like how do you make sure this stuff is like going to stand the test of time. There are like resources that are out there. And so I'd say just like spend the time to do the research as well. And then, yeah, I mean, reach out. I feel like you have a panel of people who have all been thinking about this stuff as well. And I'm sure if people had specific questions, we're all happy to answer and like share whatever knowledge we have.
Yeah, like that's such an important skill to like in Web3 to like the ability to read long technical discussion threads or like just read long blog posts is like almost like the most important thing that you can have in Web3, because so much is happening async, right?
True. Dheeraj, do you have any?
I think most, I mean, there's not much to answer, right? Like everyone has covered everything. I think like the simplest, I'll just like try to get your hands dirty and yeah, and like just do things you are interested in, like Eric mentioned.
On getting your hands dirty, I mean, a follow-up question I would have is, how can people avoid rug pulls? I mean, how do you decide
can't.
what projects
You can't. Like it's very difficult because see, the thing is, this is, if you are in the space, there are 100, like the probability of everything working out in your favor is zero. And even in life, there is always something which is deceptive and whatnot, right? Like, so you have to, whatever you're doing in the space, you have to think you are only putting in money you are able to lose, right? Be it any kind of project, or like no matter what the project. I did a space talking about like, how to keep yourself secure, which is something you can do with. Best suggestion is like, rug pooling is fine, right? Like you lose your money, but like getting hacked is even worse. So if you can keep separate wallets for just degenning with small sum of ETH, that is better, right? Like, so even if you get like hacked, if you sign a malicious contract, if you, I don't know, like if you get caught in a phishing attack, which is very possible because these are social engineering attacks, right? Like they manipulate you. But like keep your wallet separate. Keep all your valuables in a hardware wallet. Keep it, throw it away somewhere. I don't know. But like, don't have access to it very easily. But like, keep small sums to play on a hot wallet and mint on a hot wallet. So this is what I would do. With time, I'm sure, right? Like if you've seen the ICO era, if you've seen whatever is happening, you end up losing money and gaining knowledge to what to buy, what not to buy. It's going to be the same. But just don't degen into everything you see just because an influencer is telling you. So that's something I can tell.
God. I mean, a better way to frame this question, to be honest, would be: do you all have any cheat sheet or a way to scope out what a good project to ape into is? Ariman, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that I would recommend buying stuff that appeals to you, that you'd be happy to like have as your profile picture on your wall, even if it had no financial value outside. Of course, if you're looking to just flip and trade and make money by trading, that's like its own kind of like profession. And you can do it in two ways. You can do it like max degen, or like you can try to get smart and like use a bunch of like analytics tools, etc. Max degen would just be looking at things like looking at the Discord, looking at the Twitter, seeing like who else is following it, like when is like hype building, like is there some alpha leak happening within the Discord, like basically like a lot of it is unsubstantiated, like hype based. 10 on 10, would not recommend, but some people are good at it. But you can also try to look at tools and see that, okay, like which projects are getting the most mentions on Twitter, which projects are like, have the most activity in are trending on OpenSea, etc. Look, I don't think any of these are good ways to invest. I think you really have to just like go with your gut feel. But people will all tell you that like the art is important, it should be important, utility, community, and these are the important things. Community probably being the biggest one, but art for me is the biggest one. Like you should just buy something because it looks cool and you're down to like own it, not because you want to like flip it, I think.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else was thoughts on this? Awesome.
See,
So
I'll just tell you, like I'll be very realistic, right? I don't want you to get any fake hopes that like you can go and like flip projects, and it's not easy. It's very hard. Like you have to spend a lot of time researching. Like I have, like I said, right, like I have around 200 NFTs. Around 160, 170 of them are worthless, but this is my research. I'm spending my money to form my own thesis. So you can check out, like you can analyze what people are buying, whatnot, and there are tools like IC tools to see the hype and this and that. But like it's a skill you have to keep on working on, right? Like if you've flipped in, like doing garage sales, or as a kid you've sold chocolates to your fellow kids or lemonades or whatever, right? Like if you have that in you already, it's easier. But like to just learn a new skill, it's like learning coding, right? Like so it's something similar, right? Like you have to work on the skill, you have to practice it more often than not, and spend time mastering it. There is no right answer. All of us get lucky a lot, right? Like that's the thing.
That's true. Coming back to, Need's point on how Quest got sold more than Xbox, right? I'm thinking, how do you all think NFT will kind of be a gateway to the metaverse? How do you think that will kind of work or play out?
It's funny. I actually spent a lot of time talking to like more traditional Web2 companies about this, and I try to position it as when people say metaverse in general, I think the average non-Web3 company is purely talking about like the AR VR component of like, I encourage folks to listen to the podcast Mark Zuckerberg did with Lex Friedman, where he sort of talks for like 2 hours about his vision for the metaverse. And like a lot of it is just like they're trying to build these sensory experiences, like highly immersive AR, VR. And as an aside, he talks a little bit about like digital identity. He talks a little bit about NFTs. And I think the core part that I think is really interesting about NFTs, and I sort of said this at the beginning too, is just like Web3 gives you property rights in the digital space. And like, if we want to have experiences where we can own objects and like people can actually spend, like if you're an artist, if you're going to spend like dozens to maybe hundreds of hours creating something really unique without having some notion of property rights, you won't be able to like actually like capture value from the work that you've put in. And like, so I think Web3 is actually a high complement and sort of like a required step for anyone who's trying to build like a metaverse that actually retains any value or like meaning inside of there, or like people can't, like people in the real world need to go sustain themselves. Like they have to be able to like go like get groceries and things like that. And so like without having this notion of property rights, it's not possible for people to be like properly compensated for their work, I would argue. And so, yeah, I think this is actually like a natural evolution of like, if we want to see a metaverse that's like sustainable, rewards people for the work that they put in, is non-extractive. And I think that's like a core component of this as well. It requires like this neutral base layer where like people can create property rights. Users are choosing to stay inside of systems through consent, not because they're sort of like trapped in there. And honestly, I think that also is aligned with the bottom line for a lot of these companies as well. Like look at, I know people were making jokes about OpenSea, but like OpenSea had something like 14 billion in revenue or 12 billion in 2021. Compare that to like a Fortnite and like what it made for Epic. And I think there's something interesting about like OpenSea's take rate versus like the Epic take rate, and they're vastly different. One is in single digit percents, the other is in like 100% because it's a closed economy. And I think this is like, we are still at the very early stages of what the metaverse thing looks like. So I think actually there's a lot of things where we might have found the solution of how do you align the economic incentives along with like what are the social incentives. But it requires us as builders also to make sure that we are like not compromising on like the actual core principles, where it's like, do people have the ability to exit if they want to? And I think what we're learning is that by doing that, you also are enabling more value to be created as well. Yeah.
One thing I quickly say, sorry, I was just going to quickly say that just in terms of the question, one way of possibly looking at this as well is not necessarily NFTs being the gateway drug to the metaverse, but the metaverse being the gateway drugs to the NFTs. And I think that like similarly with, we're seeing a lot of NFT projects right now kind of promise, they're building their own metaverse, or they're building their own game. And in reality, like actually building a game that people want to use consistently is really, really difficult. But anyway, the idea of, whoever builds this really compelling place that is immersive and that people want to spend significant periods of their time in, I think NFTs will naturally form an extension of how then, as Ariman was mentioning before, a natural way for us to express ourselves through the good that we buy in this new digital environment we find ourselves in. So I do think that, there will be someone who, nails the idea of, let's say a 3D kind of metaverse, because the metaverse already kind of exists in a number of, forms. And NFTs will probably become a natural extension of being in that space. And I think, what we'll also find, because right now, we're talking a lot about NFTs, and NFTs themselves have become a really toxic term for like, a big portion of the world who associate it as like, degen gambling or being terrible for the environment. And, that in itself is now a meme that's relatively hard to shake off for like quite a big portion of the world. So I think, at a certain point in time soon, we won't be necessarily be talking about NFTs as like NFTs, but probably be referring to them as just, normal things that we buy as we buy in the physical world. We buy groceries and we will also buy clothes, and those clothes will just happen to be in the digital world. But yeah, I think the idea of, the metaverse enabling NFTs is something that's quite compelling.
Like I'm interested to explore this topic from like the underlying technology aspect for a little bit. There's like if you kind of take the analog of like what has happened prior to the NFT world, right? Like we have these like data like NFTs are kind of like data standards, right? On the metadata level, and we have seen these things happen in the past where the underlying data itself becomes the connective tissue of different applications, right? You can take your data, put it into one application, and you can take the data into another application. That's the simplest example. Maybe like you can like visualize your you can like visualize your JPEG in a browser, or you can visualize your JPEG in your local like file system, right? Like they're totally different softwares. Like if you look at how the metaverse is emerging, it's not one piece of software, right? It's going to be many different metaverses that make up the metaverse experience, right? You're going to be joining the Facebook metaverse, but you're also going to be a part of Decentraland. You're also going to be a part of Sandbox, right? So all of the like people are going to be participating in dozens or hundreds of these applications, and the thing that's going to connect all these worlds are going to be the NFTs that you actually own, because every application is going to build around these NFT standards, and that's going to be probably the most powerful, long-lasting effect.
So that's an interesting point as well. I mean, it was a great session. I think we should kind of wrap up. It's been, I think we're over time. I mean, I want to shout out to Jonathan for answering all the questions that we got in the Q&A. He plus answering, like taking care of this conversation, right? I mean, yeah, this was amazing. Thanks to everybody who joined. Thanks to the panelists for making out time. I think everybody learned something from this. Even if they learn one small thing, I think it's a win for the ecosystem. in my opinion.
Sorry, sure. Can I interrupt you to just make a
Yeah, sure.
like 3 minutes, and I'm very keen to hear what the panelists have said. Everyone has like made incredible points. I'd love to just get one pointer from everyone. Like if everybody could share like one project that they really like right now that people should check out. I would love to look at what you guys are looking at. So if we can just do one round of going around and saying one project to check out. Doesn't have to be to buy, just a cool project to just check out and share.
That's an interesting question.
Yeah, I can go first. I've recently been looking into the Lens protocol a lot. It's kind of an emerging social networking infrastructure in the smart contract space. Yeah, I think there's going to be lots of interesting applications emerging from that.
Did you say Lens? Lens?
Lens. Yep.
Okay, cool.
Awesome. Are those?
Oh yeah. So I have some buddies who are working on this project called Pills. I think the site is like pills.forsale. It's basically a game. The idea is that they're trying to do, like, imagine building a game where instead of like doing the classic GameFi thing, it just integrates with DeFi that already exists. And so what's interesting is they're trying to like build a DAO around just like a community narrative where like folks can like evolve the story, the characters, things like that. A lot of like the game developer efforts are very much focused on like, how do we use this as like an experiential thing, less so like, well, I'm gonna do a terrible job giving it justice. I think it's like an interesting, different approach to like how to build a project. And so I think from that perspective, I think it's just a really cool experiment. And hopefully it'll be an interesting game as well. But yeah, it's much more anchored to like, we want to create like a compelling story around this thing. Like our token mechanics are just gonna like use stuff that other people have built. And so it's really just like, can we build a fun game? Like.
Interesting.
Sweet.
Viraj.
I'll go for it. Okay. So I'll say two projects, but like just for exploration. So first is this project called MetaKey, which is being built by DCL Blocker. He's one of the OG in the crypto space. He's building for next 100, not 100, 10 years, 15 years. This is what I think. And the whole idea is like, it's an inflationary token or an NFT. There'll be, but like the whole idea is like he wants to make the entire space interoperable, and they do partnerships on daily basis with the biggest brands, biggest NFT projects and whatnot. But like what they're building is like you should go and check out in a deeper aspect, right? Like not just on the website, go on Discord, just see the conversations. Second, it's very obvious, but like people don't really do the research on it, is Axie Infinity. Like you might have said, oh, Axie might have peaked, GameFi might have peaked, but the work these guys are doing, Axie Infinity / Ronin, which is an Ethereum side chain built for gaming on like for gaming companies and building games. The amount of time they spent 4 years in bear market building this project. All the mistakes you can make to understand NFTs and DeFi, they've made it already, and they're experimenting, and they're like making like an entire ecosystem come to life on the Ronin blockchain. They have their own AMM, they have their own staking, they have everything which like you dream of to as a like if you are a project, you want to build an ecosystem, they're doing it, right? Like so as a dev, as a person who's really interested in economics of how these things work, you have to see how much work has gone from 2017 to 2022 and what's happening ahead. And that way, like if you are like NFT centric project, you can take, there's a lot of learnings. And the best aspect is how they've built the community. It's just crazy. So every tweet they do, you have thousands of people commenting on it right away. So how do you achieve that? It's very difficult.
That's true.
For me, it's World Wide Web, because it's interesting seeing an interoperable 2D metaverse that's actually, real. It's social, it's multiplayer. There's going to be aspects of kind of displaying, the things that you own. I think it's very interesting to see how an ecosystem like that can develop, and other projects can basically insert their PFPs into like pixelated avatars that you can bring into the game. I think it's really interesting to see the experiment of an interoperable metaverse play out in real time, and just what that actually means for the ecosystem, and a competitive alternative vision to maybe something like a Facebook metaverse that is like centralized and something that I question marks as to how good it's going to be for the world and for creators, and so that's definitely something I would just keep an eye on generally.
From my side, Cold-Blooded Creeps. It's a PFP project. They've got some big things coming up. I'm biased because I was closely involved with the creation of it, but Cold-Blooded Creeps, big stuff happening soon, and sick art. So check it out.
These are awesome. Thanks, Ariman, for asking this interesting question. I think if not, if you check these projects out, you'll learn something or the other. I myself am excited to check out what Need said. It sounds very interesting. But yeah, I think let's wrap up the panel. It was great. Thanks everybody for joining. Thank you to all panelists for taking out the time and talking on this topic. Hope to see you all soon again.
So, thank you, Shlok, for hosting, and it was nice to meet all of you, Jonathan, Neer, Ariman, Eric. See you guys.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks a lot. All the best, everybody, for the hackathon.
Bye. See you, everyone.
Bye.
Awesome. Bye.